Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at a mid-range sword style deck. It's pretty typical as far as sword decks go. The only really few interesting cards are the Altar Plane, which is a fun card. It's used a lot in Dragon. If you watched my last video, we used it in that deck as well. But in Sword, it's a little bit different, since usually the cards you're pulling aren't as big of an advantage as they are in Dragon, where you are actually ramping up to get this out earlier, and so that card's actually quite nice. This one's kind of just as an extra. You want to be able to use it to just pull anything that might give you an edge, might not give you an edge, low cost cards that you can potentially combo off with Sky Commander. Things like that are really what you're aiming for. It works really great in a mirror match, but in particular is just getting low cost followers that you can really abuse quite easily, or good spells that have decent value to them. Otherwise, the only other really interesting card is Magic Dealer, which typically you will see in Spartacus swords, but is actually being ran here just as an extra way to draw cards, and sometimes it definitely helps. It can come in handy to just draw something that you might not have, and overall is just a decent way to get rid of something that might be useless now in the late game that is definitely more useful now. Of course, the hardest card I found to play obviously was Honorable Knight. I'm running the 2 of it, which is a pretty stock standard build, and honestly the amount of times I've never got to play that card is astronomical. Mostly I'm playing kind of the mid package set instead, and mainly aiming for Omen of Craving for victories instead of using Latham. It's just because I don't have it in hand a lot of the time, which is just difficult. Maybe I was just having a really bad run of luck, but that does tend to be the case for me. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So our first game here is against a Rune. Pretty stable matchup for Sword, honestly, most of the time. The only real issue is if we get flooded with wards, which is only more of a problem in Mysteria than Earth these days. So overall, we should be okay going into these matchups most of the time, especially since we are starting with a early Quick Blader, which will give us a pretty nice edge, even going second. So the Quick Blader, of course, turn 1, get that damage in. Usually you can score at least 2 damage with the Quick Blader. Oh, and Knight of Mysteria, no issue at all. I don't see him played a lot in Mysteria decks now, so it does lead me to always believe that I'm playing against Dirt when I see that initially played out, as he was cut in favour of other Mysteria cards. And Witch Hunter, of course, basically confirms we're playing against Sword. Oh, sorry, Earth, we're playing Sword. And then we can pretty easily go for the Magical Marksman, aim for just some low cost removal, since I'm not too interested in wasting high cost removal at this point in the game. Even though it probably would have been good to remove something like a Golem. But we're not going to be off to a bad start. We can flood the board with this Cavalier, which is typically what I like to do, just kind of flood as much as you can. Set up for those Omen of Craving turns in the future. Now, opponent going for the Magic Founder, no surprise there at all. Ideally, you want to go into Magic Founder first and then go into... No, so you want to go Golem into Magic Founder, hope your Golem Glit's cleared, and then play Magic Founder and the Golem synergy for turn 6. That's what I tend to favour. But that's not a bad setup if you're aiming for more than one Magic Founder, and for a little bit of a long game. Did decide to go for the Necklace, since we are going to get an extra card from Usurping anyway to use, plus getting extra damage in was just more valuable to me via buff its health, so it can't be killed quite as easily. Unfortunately, they did end up having the Golem anyway, so they are going to clear out the 4-5 very easily, but we should be able to hopefully deal with that reasonably well. I did decide to favour the Usurpation on the Golem there, because I didn't expect to get Gilded Blade. If I had got any other Gilded card, I would have been much better off nearly, unless I got Ramp, I guess, so, Rush, sorry. I would have been better off with either healing or buff, but we settled for what we got. Realistically, buff was the only one that was going to be a 100% value. They did a really good job of cleaning this out without wasting too many cards. No surprise at all. So we're going to set up the Leod, along with go for whatever we can damage-wise. 5 damage is really nice. That means we only need to stick 1 card here to win the game. And it looks like we are going to manage that. So now we can go Quick Blader into Craving for victory with 6 damage. We also ended up with the Commander Celia, which would have got us lethal as well in the end, but Craving play was what I'd set up to begin with, so we may as well finish the match with that. Now, next up for our match, we're going up against Dragon. This was a match that I was a little worried about, as if we don't have a strong start, we could definitely get rolled over very quickly. I found that my Dragon matchups were about 50-50 when I was playing this deck. But I have seen people playing very similar decks to this Sword deck. Others are including, of course, Octrees, which I just don't have any of. But obviously those decks are doing very well. I think I saw some people with about a 70% win rate in the current meta, and that's quite impressive. So I thought, why not give it a go? And I've got to say, this deck was reasonably solid. Sometimes you've got to make decisions like that. Removing a Chromatic Duel was probably the best move I could make then, just to get this 2-2 on board. Here I did make a small error. I probably should have went for the Usurping, cleaned out the Bane, went for 3 damage, instead of course, going for the Cavalier, which I can't actually use until turn 5 anyway. But it worked out, since we can, of course, use Spineblade later, and we can use Marksman now, giving us the follower. So while it wasn't an ideal setup, I mean, it worked out enough. But now they're going to start ramping, which is definitely not what we want to deal with. And dealing with a Dragon Sword, while not a problem, is definitely something I didn't want to have to do. So I did decide to go for the Cavalier, flood board, since we do have a really good couple of Celias now. And forcing them to deal with this was just going to be much more valuable to me. And I also decided to, of course, go for Queen of White, since, of course, she's going to be really good value later on, getting a couple of followers out of it. That's typically what I aim for. But they did an amazing job, honestly, of wiping out most of these followers. I was very impressed with how many they wiped out, but they did leave up the Quick Blader, which was a little bit of a risk. The only problem now is I've got to try and push lethal, and I don't have that many options to do so. I did decide to take the Celia with the Evo, since that will take them down to 5, and that means I only need to draw another low-cost follower to go for lethal. Well, actually, we could have went for lethal without another follower. Unfortunately, they healed up, which was absolutely devastating. I have seen a few dragons running Pure Voice Dragoon, even in tournaments, because it is a really good card. But since they did end up getting that healing, we're pretty much devastated as far as we go, since we couldn't use our Celia Quick Blader combination as well as I would have liked to. But we can at least go for 3 damage, plus a little bit extra, so we're actually going for pretty decent damage this turn, 5, bringing them down to 6. I would say that would be the Prince, that's what they would be aiming for there. And they went for a Zoe play. That could be devastating if they get Zoe. Our only chance now, though, is to pretty much deal with this board as much as we can, while setting ourselves up. And I had to decide not to heal face, because I really need this 3-3 to survive as best it can. Unfortunately, Omen of Disdain kind of ruins that plan a little bit, but I mean, it's better than losing all of these immediately. Even if it means we have to take 3 damage. Apostle, going to buy us a little more time again. I could have come close to lethal. I mean, we would have been at, I think, 4 damage, so we would have only been 2 off that turn if I had have went for Herma, but this was the best thing I could come up with. It protects our board. If they can't deal with these followers, we just craving and win, which, since they obviously conceded, was exactly what they couldn't do. Deal with those few followers. I mean, once you do block that kind of spell and effect damage, it does become hard to remove things, so I definitely see why they were stuck in that position. If they didn't already have a Storm in hand, it was pretty much game over at that point, especially once I saw them play more draw, so they didn't have a Zoe in hand to play for that 10 cost that would have honestly probably won them the game. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. This deck list was a fair bit of fun and pretty straightforward to play. It is semi-expensive, I guess, as far as it goes, because it does run quite a few legendaries, and you could even put more in it as far as the Octrees goes. But if you guys did enjoy this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more content. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, see ya.